Hey gang, welcome back to the channel. I'm Fear the Platypus, and in this video we're going to do a monster build. Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year. There's ghosts and ghouls and candy, but the dollar stores have some really great items that they put out this time of year. It seemed like this year everybody was carrying these little skeletons of rats and bats and cats and crows and spiders. I think there was a dog somewhere in there. But anyhow, when I was trying to come up with my monster build for this Halloween's project, and I found this rat skeleton, I thought, this is perfect. I've been playing a lot of sci-fi games lately, and I was looking for some kind of a creature that I could incorporate that was a little different. Well, I think I got my wish this year. So remember, if you're interested in crafting terrain or items for your tabletop RPGs, then hit that subscribe button and click on the little bell so you'll be notified when I post my next video. So let's get started on our Giant Cybernetic Zombie Rat. This project was really kind of an experiment in working with items that I normally don't use in my everyday crafting. Hopefully it turns out good and I'm not crying by the end of the video. The skeleton had a lot of mold lines, but nothing that couldn't be handled by a hobby knife and a file. The head, jaw, and arms are posable, which I thought was kind of neat for a dollar skeleton. I used super glue to hold the arms in a pose that I wanted. I chose a stick-on gem to go into one of the eye sockets, and I secured it in with super glue. To build the main body structure of the rat, I used Sargent Art Sculpted Air Dry Clay. When sculpting with clay, it's a good idea to have some water to dip your fingers into. It helps with shaping and smoothing the clay, and it keeps the clay from sticking to your fingers. I didn't really have any kind of a pattern as to how I was going to form the body. I basically just made some bloated areas, and then some thin areas, and some areas with exposed bone. Using a sculpting tool helps you to reach into smaller areas to smooth out the clay and clean up clay that may have gotten where you don't want it. If you don't have sculpting tools, a plastic knife will work just as well. After it was sculpted the way that I wanted it, I needed to let it sit for 24 hours so the clay could dry. Air dry clay shrinks as it dries, so as you can see, the clay on the face shrank and came off, and the body has cracked in numerous places. So I'm going to use Liquitex gel medium to fill in the gaps. I recommend having water near for the same reasons you use it with the clay. The brush I'm using is a cheap crafting brush that I use only for working with the gel medium. Don't use your good miniature brushes when working on something like this because it could ruin them. Go cheap for terrain and projects like this and save the expensive brushes for detailed miniature painting. So the gaps are filled and the body is sculpted. Now we'll let it dry for another 24 hours so the gel can harden. After allowing it to dry, I'm going to take PVA glue and apply it in a few different places to add some small pieces of chipboard to the rat. These pieces will be painted later to look like pieces of metal embedded in the rat's skin. I then used PVA to glue a piece of thin chipboard around the neck to make a collar. Then I took 3 toothpicks and cut the tips off. I glued the tips spaced around the collar to create spikes. I originally used PVA glue for this, but eventually had to re-glue them with super glue. For the hydraulic lines, I'm using coffee stirrer straws. I attached them to the rat with hot glue. While it helped hold everything together during construction, I did have to use super glue later to reattach them to the rat. I waited to cut the stir straws until after I had glued them down. This allowed me to tailor each angle exactly as I needed them. It worked out pretty good, being that I have never tried something like this before, but I think in the future it would be easier to measure and assemble it, then glue it to the project and trim it as needed. The hot glue did work out pretty good for the assembly of the lines, and though it left globs, it was a great look for acid or toxins leaking out of the lines. I apologize for not having any footage of the painting. I'm still trying to find a good camera angle when painting things like this because of the limited use of my right arm. Basically though, I started with an airbrushing of surface primer and then a base coat of bark brown. I used antique white for the bones and a regular white to cover any areas that were going to be where the metal would be. Then it was a silver for any metal and gunmetal for the hydraulic lines. I used bright magenta on the inside of the ears, the tail, the paws, and any exposed flesh where the hydraulic lines entered the rat. Then on the exposed flesh, I used a thermal green to represent an acid or a toxin of some sort coursing through its blood. I used black for the collar and silver for the spikes, all followed by a dry brush over the rat's fur, tail, paws, and inside of the ears with an earth brown. I went back to the thermal green for the leaks in the lines, and I finished it off with a black wash. And of course, the only thing that could stop a mega rat is going to be a mega cat. And here are a few photos of how it looks finished. If you would be interested in how I created the base for this project, then leave a comment in the belows and maybe I'll do a video on it. So there you have it, gang, my take on a giant cybernetic zombie rat. Hopefully you found this video helpful and informative. Before you go, don't forget to click on that like button, and if you know somebody that would enjoy this video, share it with a friend. Leave your comments, questions, favorite color, anything craft related down in the belows. And by the way, my favorite color is actually 2, black and red. Thank you to all of my subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, then hit that subscribe button and click on the little bell so you'll be notified when I post my next video. Thank you for sharing your time with me. As always, happy crafting and happy gaming. I'm Fear the Platypus, and this one is done.